The Unexplained Rundown is pleased to partner with tpublic.com and bring you some fun and fantastical apparel and accessories that are truly out of this world. If you're keen to support the show and see it grow, be sure to check out some of the cool designs in the merch store and grab yourself a bargain. Use the link in the description below.
Concern you about the unknown and the unidentified flying object?
Oh, yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had with the military, and they never were able to make me a concrete report on.
Do you have anything on the subject, sir?
No, I haven't had anything on the subject, and there's always things like that going on. The flying saucers, and we've had other things, you know.
For years, the world has seen reality distorted, facts manipulated, and truth hidden. But there's even more to the story than anyone has ever suspected, because no one has been able to see the whole picture until now.
Friends, welcome back to another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. It is good to be with you. If you're new to the channel and you found it intentionally, then like me, you're intrigued by the unexplained mysteries of this mortal coil of ours, and you crave to know what's real and what's not. So whether you're joining from, whether it's your morning, your evening, your graveyard shift, welcome. It's always to be good with you. And we've already got some friends in the house, so always good to see you, Jimmy. Never misses an episode. Love your work, mate. And Jasmine is always here. Great to see you, Jazz. Thanks for joining. And Jojo Diamonds, hi, guys. Great to see you here as well. Short show this evening, folks. I always say that, but I don't anticipate we will go nearly as long as usual. Not as many homegrown stories to cover, but nonetheless, I want to bring you some of the things that have been happening down under as well as abroad. Obviously, want to call out folks that support the channel. Thank you to our very generous Patreon members, Jimmy, Jasmine, Clint, Shane, Dan, and YouTube member Telekinetic. If you're interested to support the channel and see it grow, take a look at some of the membership options on Patreon and YouTube. Links are in the show notes below. So feel free to check it out if you want to go above and beyond a like, share, subscribe, which is most greatly appreciated. Most folks that watch this show aren't subscribers, so smash that subscribe button if you like the content and you want to watch it whenever we go live. So before we jump on in, folks, I thought it would be remiss of me if I did not introduce a new item that is now available in the merch store. If I just pull this up for you, let me see if we've got this ready to go. So I thought this was a fun addition to the merch store. You can now have your very own Aussie UAP researcher doll. I kid. Just jumping on the AI bandwagon and thought this was a fun little. Hey, if it was available, I'd buy it for my son, of course, not for me, but. It seems to be the craze at the moment. Everyone's throwing together these AI generated toy dolls, and you see more of them every day. So last month it was the Ghibli animation, and now it's onto AI generated toy dolls. So I'm sure there'll be something new and fresh for next month. Mark, good to see you, my friend. Thank you for taking some time out of your evening, wherever you're joining from. It's always good to be with you. So this evening's show, folks, is the lead story. We're going to discuss some new details on AARO's inaugural Five Eyes UAP Caucus working group meeting, which we know took place on the 24th of May of 2023. So this is now coming up on almost 2 years ago, and we're still getting dribs and drabs of new information. So you might recall, before we jump into the document that I'm going to reveal for you, some of you may have seen it, some of you may have not. Let me just remind you, for those of you that aren't well versed with AARO's Five Eyes briefing on UAP back in, and the Five Eyes is the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK. So some of you might recall that I was able to secure for release through FOIA. Let me just zoom on in. A copy of AARO's meeting agenda for this Five Eyes UAP Caucus working group meeting. And this is an updated version of the agenda that I received, but just to kind of go through it, very briefly, what was it all about? Well, representatives from the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, were in attendance, along with representatives of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the ODNI, the FAA, NASA, and Five Eyes Partners Working UAP. So what is this meeting? It's an inaugural Five Eyes UAP caucus that brings together key partners to cultivate shared awareness of allies' UAP issues, detection, identification, and mitigation activities and challenges, and opportunities for mission-specific collaboration. Planned presentations include our own office updates on operations and analyses, and, in bold, updates from Five Eyes partners. The intent is to develop a framework for future UAP collaboration. When did it take place? 24th of May, 2023, almost an all day, 8:30 to 3 p.m. No lunch hosted by AARO, so folks were directed to the old pig pen in the food court, the Pentagon, for an hour lunch break. Those without Pentagon access, please plan to meet at the Pentagon visitors entrance no later than 8 a.m. And where was it? In the Pentagon, in room redacted. And we know what the agenda looked like. Introductions, welcoming remarks from Dr. Kirkpatrick, and US updates on UAP efforts pertaining to AARO's operations, AARO analysis, AARO strategic communications, the FAA, NASA, NIM-A, which is National Intelligence Measure for Aviation, and NIM-M, National Intelligence Measure for Maritime. Then moving later in the day, there was a 15-minute break. And after that, importantly, Five Eyes partner UAP updates, with Australia being the first cab off the rank. So again, I'm still very interested to learn what Australia had to contribute to this Five Eyes UAP Caucus Working Group meeting, because as many of you will know, Australia really has not had any interest in the UAP topic since 1996. That's when the Royal Australian Air Force washed its hand and said, "Move along, folks, nothing to see here." They ceased all of their investigatory efforts into UAP. And I think they actually did that in, they referred folks to the local UFO civilian organizations like MUFON and so on. And there have been no reporting and recording mechanisms in place on UAP since 1996. So after Five Eyes partner updates, there was discussion on a Five Eyes UAP collaboration way ahead plan. Would love to see what that looks like, and I believe we might see something in the not too distant future on that. Then the lunch break, followed by continued discussions on Five Eyes UAP collaboration way ahead plan if it was needed. One thing to note, the amount of time that was allocated for Five Eyes partner updates, so 10:15 to 11:30. So you got an hour and 15 minutes for partner updates from four Five Eyes partners: Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, New Zealand. So what's that? That's that's 25. What's that? About 25 minutes each. Just pretty much 20 minutes, at least 20 minutes each, to discuss what they're doing in their respective countries. Topics to consider: networks to share Five Eyes UAP reporting at the unidentified level, secret level, relative to Five Eyes, and TK, which is talent keyhole relevant to Five Eyes. Need for shared databases showing known objects using various sensors. Five Eyes UAP collection planning. Future meeting schedule, how often, virtual and or in person, and other Five Eyes forums to tie into emerging and disruptive technologies. And then you had the signature of the individual that sent this email. So that's just a recap for you. For folks that have not seen that document, which I was able to secure for release through FOIA, that gave us really our first glimpse at what was going on across the Five Eyes with that inaugural AARO briefing. So thanks to the great work of a researcher out there I'll pull up this deck so you can see it. So researcher Steve T does some great work on securing for release documents in Canada. And on the 6th of April, earlier this month, put out a post on X. A secret briefing memo from a Canadian military official discusses the first Five Eyes gathering on UAP hosted by the Pentagon. It took place on 24 May 2023. Most of the content is heavily redacted. And then he goes on into a bit of a thread. So Steve was kind enough to share with me the entirety of the document that he posted on X. Some of you may have already seen it, some have not. So I'm going to share with you now that document so you can kind of get a sense as to what additional insights we're able to glean from this new document that had been secured for release through Canada's equivalent of FOIA. So let me pull up this document so we can have a look at it together. I'll zoom on in so it's a little easier on the eyes. So I've just highlighted a few things on screen just to kind of call out some information about the document. Released under the ATIA, unclassified information, secret, and then the rest is redacted. They use white instead of blackout. So instead of black redactions, Canada is using white redactions. So this document was authored on the 16th of June of 2023, so only less than a month after AARO's Five Eyes briefing on UAP. And it's titled Trip Report, Inaugural Meeting of Five Eyes, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon, UAP, 24th of May at the Pentagon. So, and then basically this trip summary by this individual, this representative that represented Canada at AARO's Five Eyes briefing, kind of summarized a lot of the key takeaways and reiterated the aim of the briefing was to provide a summary of the inaugural Five Eye UAP. This was the intention behind this document. The aim of this document is to provide a summary of the inaugural meeting hosted by the DoD on 24th of May 2023, with particular emphasis on examining a way forward for RCAF, the Royal Canadian Armed Forces, and CAF, Canadian Air Force, I believe, or it might be Royal Canadian Air Force and Canadian Armed Forces, with regard to UAP. Background information. This was the inaugural meeting. This session took place in Washington, D.C. on 24th of May, 2023. And it's actually interesting to note, I'll just come back to the other document. This is important to probably mention that the meeting took place, if we come up with an email, this was an email correspondence from a representative of AARO to Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Dr. K, the 24 May 2023 Five Eyes UAP meeting will be at the Pentagon in room redacted. This is a TS, top secret / SCI, sensitive compartment information, OUSDI INS room. So that, to me, tells me that there is classified information that was being shared during this briefing. So if it's a TS SCI room, then does that mean it's a SCIF or it's the equivalent of a SCIF? Interesting. So, certainly hints at there being quite sensitive and classified information being shared at this briefing. Canadian participation. So we know that there were 3 representatives from Canada. Now their names are redacted, obviously to protect their privacy. So 3 representation for Canada, 3 individuals. And the meeting was held at the Pentagon. The rest is redacted. Description and purpose of the Five Eyes briefing. Description: the format was a morning of briefings with an afternoon of sidebar discussions on relevant topics. And this is pretty much a carbon copy of what you saw on the agenda. The majority of the morning was taken up by briefings by US counterparts that included AARO operations, AARO analysis, AARO strategic comms, FAA, NASA, and NIM-A and NIM-M. And this is a secret document. These briefings were followed by Five Eyes partner briefings on their current UAP activities. The purpose of this inaugural Five Eyes UAP caucus was to bring together key partners to cultivate shared awareness of allies UAP issues. So again, this is lifted directly from that agenda document, focusing on detection, identification, mitigation activities and challenges. It was also to examine opportunities for mission-specific collaboration. Some topics that were included for consideration, but not necessarily fully addressed during the meetings included. So that speaks to the fact that these were obviously brought up in discussion. A network to share Five Eyes UAP reporting. That's interesting. Need for shared databases showing known objects using various sensors. Also interesting. Five Eyes UAP collection planning, future meeting schedule and format, in-person, virtual, and other Five Eyes forums to tie into. Again, all lifted directly from the agenda document. Now, this is unfortunately where we don't get to know a whole lot else. Observations completely redacted. Nothing that is obviously unclassified at the unclassified level. It's obviously redacted for a specific reason, whether it's classified information, deliberations. The redactions are cited S13-1A and S15-1. I suspect they're national security, classified information, deliberations, intelligence sharing across Five Eyes partners. UAP reporting, also completely redacted. Nothing, and that's quite a big chunk of the page there. I'm still scrolling down. This is the one that's interesting, though. Partner briefs. So this is where, Canada, Australia, UK, and New Zealand were all invited to present on what each of their respective countries are doing or have been doing with relation to data collection on UAP, investigation, analysis, collection, and so on. Now, what's interesting to note is how brief this section is. So you've got basically 2 lines of commentary to kick things off with partner briefs, and then probably only, what's that? Less than half a dozen more lines. And there's an entire section devoted to the Canadian brief. So the Canadians have obviously got some key messages that they wanted to share, but look how small the contribution is from Australia, the UK, and New Zealand. Now, as I have long suspected, and I was puzzled by, Australia more than likely had very little to contribute at this meeting based on the fact that it hasn't got off its ass and done anything since 1996. It hasn't taken any investigatory interest in this topic. It hasn't offered members of the Australian Defence Force any reporting mechanisms. So it doesn't surprise me that the partner brief section that was authored by this representative of Canada is very, very short, which is disappointing that Australia had nothing to really bring to the table at this meeting. But I would be very interested to know what that paragraph of commentary, what insights can be gleaned from that paragraph. It's unlikely we'll never know because that information has been redacted. And again, I don't know what those redactions, those exemptions are, but again, my suspicion is that it's national security related, intelligence sharing. It's going to be classified. And you can see the Canadian brief was, pretty decent. Canadian brief and key messages covered the following: A, B, C. I don't know why they've left C and D not redacted, but maybe it's just the way they did it. E and F, CAF, D and D sees benefit at continuing participation within this forum. So Canada sees it worthwhile to continue to attend AARO briefings on UAP, and C, A, F, D, and D will be beginning to address some of its challenges so that we can better integrate into the collective Five Eyes UAP efforts. So Canada is going to be taking more of an active role with Five Eyes collaboration with AARO. Transport Canada perspective. Prior to the meeting, it was not possible to identify any relevant primary office for UAP within Transport Canada. Consequently, while the FAA and NASA participated in this meeting, there was no Transport Canada participation. However, based on pre and post meeting research, a number of facts can be identified with regards to Transport Canada's approach. UAP reporting is captured through the Civil Aviation Daily Occurrence Reporting System. KDORS is the acronym. NAV Canada reports UAP sightings to Transport Canada through email as aviation occurrence reports, and UAP are coded under the same category tag in KDORS: weather balloon, meteor, rocket, service, which John Greenwald's done a lot of work on, UFO, and Transport Canada considers UAP investigation to be outside of their mandate. Consequently, while willing to work with other departments, they do not act or follow up on UAP reporting. And we know that Sky Project Canada has put together a ton of recommendations for the Canadian government to consider, with the implementation of a formal investigatory body that will receive reports and investigate reports from the general public, from civilians in Canada. So, Canada, credit to them. They're getting off their backside and they're actually taking the topic seriously and following the US's lead on UAP. So, kudos to Canada for their efforts, as maybe minimal as they appear. At least they're doing something, which is good. 15 and 16 paragraphs completely redacted. Director AARO's UAP perspective also redacted, which is a shame. The way ahead plan internally completely redacted. Have no idea. I know the way ahead plan is something that a FOIA request has been submitted on, so hopefully we see that come out in the not too distant future. I haven't submitted that FOIA request. I won't reveal the identity of the person that has, because they will leave it for them to reveal that document if and when they receive it. But this is what's interesting. 19, external. Additional participation will continue with, now this is information that we have not, this is the first time that we've really heard this. A lot of people are saying additional participation will continue with an annual in-person and intervening virtual sessions throughout the year. So this inaugural briefing took place in 2023. So we can assume, based on this information in this document, that there was a AARO Five Eyes briefing in 2024, and we're almost coming up on 2 years next month since the inaugural briefing by AARO. So it would be safe to assume that if it hasn't happened already, there will be another annual in-person engagement across the Five Eyes with AARO this year. So I've submitted a FOIA request for the agenda, presentations, meeting minutes of any in-person engagement, as well as any virtual meetings that AARO held that they facilitated for the Five Eyes in 2024. That will probably take a long time to come back, because I know there's a significant volume of FOIA requests ahead of me. But it'll be interesting to see what, again, who was the representation very much the same? We know that only one representative for defense for Australia attended. There was 3 representatives from Canada. Does that representation increase for Australia in 2024? It'll be interesting to see. So also there is a need to identify a Transport Canada Office of Responsibility, so that we're not representing them, particularly in any discussions when the FAA and NASA are the key contributing agencies. So for me, someone that's interested in following the Australian government's interest, or rather lack thereof, on the topic, that there are AARO's having annual engagements with its Five Eyes partners in person and intervening virtual sessions throughout the year. How many virtual sessions are there? How many virtual sessions have already taken place? That would be very, very interesting to know. And 20, first sentence or two is redacted. His assistance would likely be beneficial and facilitate our own people with establishing the beginning, maybe, of our own CAF UAP approach. This would be through this through his providing the US context and an understanding of their approach as the starting point for our own discussions. Be interested to learn who they're referring to there. Who's the he in question? But takeaway there is it looks like the Canadian Armed Forces, if that's what CAF is, I believe it is, Canadian Armed Forces is interested in establishing its own UAP approach. And that's above and beyond any recommendations that were made by Sky Project Canada to the Canadian government for the establishment of an investigatory body at the public level. So some interesting revelations. And final comment drafted by, looks like there were two names there, possibly. So that's the document. So, no bombshells or smoking guns, but for someone like me that's interested to know about Australia's involvement, we know that there was very little contribution from Five Eyes partners, and we know that there are meetings on an annual cadence, in person and virtual meetings as well, and that this briefing took place in a top secret TS/SCI room, which would indicate there's certainly classified information that's being discussed. So very, very interesting. Watch this space. Obviously, hope to have more to reveal to you in due course on what was tabled for discussion at AARO's Five Eyes briefing in 2024. Again, we're only seeing this documentation now from the inaugural meeting that took place back in 2023. So a couple of comments that everyone, folks have submitted. So do want to appreciate you sharing your comments. So do want to share them as we progress through the live stream. We've got quite a few. So let's come on back to see where we're at. Aussie was 5 brown eyes. Oh geez, good to see you, Aussie was. Thank you for tuning in. Depressed Canadian, yes, this is a live broadcast. So welcome. If I don't believe I've seen you in the live chat before, so welcome. If this is your first tuning in, it's good to have you here. Aaron, great to have you here as well. Thank you for joining in. How much of the grant models? Priceless, my friend, priceless. No, they would be straight to the clearance bin with Ashton Forbes. Let me tell you, maybe not as fast as the clearance bin as Ashton, but Depressed Canadian. Hey Grant, with the online hate/constructive feedback you've gotten, would you consider yourself a skeptic? I'm a skeptic at this point because the online atmosphere is exhausting. I do. I certainly come at this topic with a very skeptical mind, but also an open mind. Like I don't want to, if someone, and I've said this time and again, if someone throws out a claim and they don't provide any supporting evidence, evidence to support their claim, and it pertains to this topic, but particularly in an Australian context, that's very interesting to me because I'm still continue to be perplexed by the Australian government's lack of engagement and interest on this topic. So when claims are made, whether it be from Stephen Greer, Chris Bledsoe, Jason Sands, anyone that puts a claim out there, I come at it from a very skeptical mind. But I'm also open to the possibility that there may be some documentary evidence that can support that claim or refute it. So, I probably place greater weight on some claims than I do others. But that's pretty much the approach that I've taken. If I hear a claim, I'm incredibly skeptical of the claim if no evidence is presented. And if it pertains to Australia, then I want to see if I can find some evidence that supports that claim or refutes the claim and call out the individual that's made the claim if it turns out to be BS. Because I don't want to be lied to. I certainly don't want others that take this topic seriously to be lied to. And I think if there are people that are making claims that are they're inaccurate, they're false, I'm sorry, I'm going to call you out on it. I'm going to find out whatever information I can, and if it doesn't support your claim, like to date, I haven't found any documentary evidence to support Stephen Greer's claim that he briefed the former Australian Minister for Defence, Stephen Smith, in 2013. Now, I'm not just stopping there. I'll continue to try and find documentary evidence that supports or further refutes Dr. Stephen Greer's claim. But that's kind of the approach that I take with it. I don't put a lot of stock in if someone throws up a video on X or YouTube and it claims to be an incredible, some incredible footage of UAP. I don't really, I don't invest a lot of time, energy, and effort in photographs and videos because in this day and age, everything can be faked with AI, deep fakes, and so on. So I prefer to have something tangible that corroborates other data points. And for me, that's often FOIA as one avenue. So long-winded answer to your question, but thank you for that question because it's not one that I think has come up all that often. Jojo Diamonds, are you talking about on Reddit? Feel free to add a bit of context there, Jojo, as that might have been in response to an earlier comment from someone else. Erin, you're right. Canada always does things differently. White redactions. That is true. I hadn't seen white redactions before, so it kind of threw me for a bit. Yes, many thanks, Mark. Be sure to hit that like button, folks. And again, if you're not a subscriber, please do feel free to subscribe. A lot of folks I've found out looking at some of the analytics that watch the Unexplained Rundown, you're not a subscriber. So subscribe if you like the content that I put out. Short Order Cook One, good to be with you. Thank you for joining as always. Dave Christian, hello. Thank you for joining. Jojo, you don't use Twitter. Yeah, I am predominantly on Twitter primarily. I haven't sunk my teeth into the Reddit universe, even though I've got a Reddit account. I might try and find out how to use it at some point. But most of the content that I put out there is on X, on Twitter, formerly Twitter, as well as obviously YouTube. And if you like to listen to your podcast, you can listen to us on Spotify as well. I think the topic has gone a certain direction, Sinex, which makes it harder for some to believe and not be a skeptic. Yeah, we certainly have kind of now moved. You know, if you followed the topic from 2017, the New York Times article, it was very much nuts and bolts. And now we've kind of moved to the consciousness connection aspect, the Sinex side. So, I mean, I find it very interesting in what Skywatcher and Jake Barber and his team are doing. And I just look forward to seeing what data they're able to put out there and then have that data peer reviewed by the scientific community. So I think their efforts are to be applauded. They've certainly put out there a framework that I think is they're doing something is better than doing nothing. And that's why I think, as much crap as I guess Brandon Fugal and his team get for the work that they do at Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, History Channel covers it, and they do it in a very sensationalized way. They've got a goal of getting to 10 seasons, like The Curse of Oak Island. But, I give credit to Brandon Fugal and his team. At least they're out there doing something. Like if anyone gets out there and, has a night vision camera and they want to film the sky to collect some data, or if there is folks going out there doing a CE5 effort, or Skywatchers out there, at least they're doing something. At least they're trying to collect some data. And if their intentions are good, they'll then open source, they'll share that data so that it can be heavily scrutinized and can be peer reviewed. So I'm interested to see what Skywatcher continues to put out throughout the year. Let's see some of the other comments. Aussie was the revelation about Sonics threw a wet blanket over the topic. I can see certainly how some would, take it that way. I mean, I've come from very nuts and bolts way of looking at it. I kind of haven't dived into the consciousness aspect yet, or Sonics, so that's very new to me, and that's why I'm interested to see what comes out of the Skywatcher team. Yep. Jimmy's comment, something definitely here to study, investigate in the phenomenon. We just need some real evidence at this point. Yeah, we need enough with the stories. You know, the anecdotes are great. They're obviously, anecdotal evidence is important, but it's just anecdotal evidence. You can't really give anecdotal evidence to a scientist to try and they can't do a whole lot with that data. That's why you need more data points than just anecdotes. And that's why, again, I applaud the efforts like the Galileo Project, Skywatcher, you know, and folks that are out there just trying to collect data. SCU, you know, they're at least trying to scrutinize data that is available. Yeah, you raise a good point, Jimmy. For me, the fact that Jake Barber has ties to Stephen Greer is a bit of a red flag. When I first found out that Jake Barber had ties to Stephen Greer, based on just the research that I've done on Stephen Greer's claims about his engagement with Australian government officials, kind of threw up a bit of a red flag for me as well. But it's interesting that you know, what Skywatcher are proclaiming is working for them, and they're doing is what Stephen Greer has preached about for decades. You know, CE5, and now you've got human-initiated contact experiences, and you've got Skywatcher out there doing essentially the same thing with psionics. They're doing their version of CE5, which Greer has talked about for decades. Yes, our government a lazy socks as of you know what. That's very true. And we have an election coming up in Australia in just a few weeks, so it'll be interesting to see if there's a change in hands of government, if the new incoming government will have a little bit more appetite on the UAP topic, or if they'll show next to no appetite like this government and the last few governments. The fact is, the topic is too big for Australia to deal with. Yeah, you got to remember, Australia is a relatively small country. We don't even have 30 million people as our population. But you would think, though, that Australia being as close as an ally as it is to the United States, and the fact that it's investigated UAP historically for almost as long as the US has, Australia has investigated UAP, or unusual aerial sightings, as it referred to, back in the decades past, from the early 50s through to 1996. So really not too much shorter than what the US have been investigating the topic of. The US since the Roswell era, or 1945, if you believe the Trinity incident. So Australia's had an interest in this topic for decades. They just haven't done anything since 1996 because they apparently can't find any scientific or other compelling reason to devote resources to the investigation of UAP, which again mind boggles me, knowing where we are today in 2025 compared to where we were in 1996 and what we knew about the topic then. Just look at everything that's happened in the last 8 years since the New York Times articles came out. It's just mind-boggling how much has happened. Very true. Sad day. Woo Rider's dog. Yes, Pope Francis sadly passed away, I believe, early this morning. So very, very sad news to come out of the Vatican. So thoughts, obviously, with those that are of the Catholic faith around the globe. Sorry for you and those that support your faith. Obviously sad when anyone passes away, but I know that the Pope Francis was particularly loved and admired by millions. So sad to hear that he has passed. Jojo Jones, I still love watching Ross Coulthart, but wish he wasn't so convinced about Barber. It's hard to know why he has that position. I suspect there is probably a lot more than that Ross knows that he is, ready to share or can share if he's received information in confidence. But it's. I have to kind of remind myself that it's very easy to take a scratch the surface level assessment of someone when all I've seen of Jake Barber is all that is out in the public domain. That's, thanks to Ross with his interview, thanks to Jesse Michaels. That's all I know of Jake Barber. I haven't had any engagement with Jake Barber. I haven't been privy to any of the conversations that he has had with Ross. So I suspect, there is a hell of a lot more information that Ross is aware of that is not in the public domain. So, that's one thing to keep in mind. Maybe that additional information that Ross has received that we're not privy to is maybe why Ross is so confident about Barber and his claims. Yeah, that's a good point, Ozzy was. I'm still waiting for Barber to land a craft like he said he would. He said that, I believe he said that the evidence that they will produce or plan to produce will be what did he say? It won't be debunkable. So they've got a certain superior degree of confidence in what they're doing and what they've collected thus far. So I guess all we can do is watch this space with what Skywatcher are doing. Great to see so many of you put out so many comments, which is wonderful. So I haven't even got off the lead story yet onto the rundown. But Dave Christian, Kirkpatrick, the man is more skeptical than than Mick West. My gripes with Kirkpatrick was he really never came across as being all that enthused about the job. He was ordered to take the job. He was ordered to be the stand-up AARO and be its inaugural director. So I don't think he probably wanted that to be his last assignment, and he took it. He took it under orders begrudgingly. So he never came across as someone that was very interested in the job, or at least excited at the potential in what the data could reveal. He came across as quite a boring scientist, to be perfectly honest. That's my that's my very subjective assessment. Some of the other comments come through. We write as DG Dave. Remember, Kirkpatrick had higher ups. Also, we never really know how one in that position truly feels. Yeah, I mean, if you listen to what I think it was James Fox was saying that he was in a skiff with the current AARO director, John Kosloski, and Kosloski was saying, I basically have to get authorization to, what did he say? I've got to get authorization to comb my hair or something ridiculous. So, he can't do anything without getting approval from those in the higher ups, which is a little bit disappointing to hear. So, yes, I'm not. Thanks for Depressed Canadian. I am reading the comments. I'm not going through every single comment because there are just too many to go through. But I will try and read through as many as I can. Let's just see if a few others have come through. Grant needs a Foster's. Oh, don't even. I lived in LA for a year, and I was amazed at how many people assumed that was our drink of choice, our frothy chop of choice. I don't even know if you can buy Foster's in Australia, which is so ridiculous. It's promoted as the Australia's beer when you're abroad, but I've never even seen it sold in Australia, and it tastes literally like piss. Something that I'm sure Jay Anderson would probably enjoy. Anyway, moving off of that. Depressed Canadian, thank you so very much for your support. Generous donation of $5 Canadian. Thank you so very much. Not needed whatsoever, as I'm very happy to read out the comments that you take the time to write, but I do appreciate your support. So thank you so very much. A couple other comments that have come through. Let's see. Oh, another one. What do you? Thank you so very much, Depressed Canadian. Another donation. You didn't need to do that, my friend. I love Ross's work on the topic, but I hate the pressure to produce content where there is nothing to be made on a weekly basis. That's very true. And I I certainly applaud and am amazed by the frequency at which Patrick from Vetted is able to put out content, which I think he does a great service in the sense that for folks that are time poor, like I've got a full-time job, I've got a family, and as Jimmy knows, because he often shares with me a lot of his key takeaways from the many podcasts that are out there that he listens to, it's sometimes incredibly hard just to stay up to date with what's going on. So it's good that you have shows like Vetted and Need to Know and Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague. Those guys will break down, much like we're doing, they'll break down some of the key stories that have been happening, more so US centric, whereas kind of focus on the Australia side, even though we cover US stories as well. But I'm always impressed by Patrick from Vetted's commitment to putting out content on a daily basis, because it's not easy preparing to do a live stream or upload an edited video. It takes a lot of time. So I know some people have been critical of the content that maybe Vetted puts out. I don't watch all of their content. If it strikes an interest, I'll watch it. I think Patrick does a really good job in covering a lot of topics. So sometimes I wish he would probably ask some more pressing questions of his guests and challenge them a little bit more. But overall, I applaud his efforts. I think he does a great job in at least curating some good content for people to watch if they're interested and they don't have the time to watch the entire episode or podcast. Oh, depressed Canadian, you've gone insane, my friend. I feel like I need to say this, but remember in 2023 when someone got a ton of traction saying Biden met with aliens called the Gansey. I vaguely remember that and signed a treaty because I do, and that was hilarious, albeit sad. First and foremost, thank you so very much, depressed Canadian, for your very generous support. I really appreciate it. I think that was from memory. I think it might have been Stephen Diner or Steve Sprague. Both have, I know Stephen Diner has a podcast. I can't remember the name of it, unfortunately. And Stephen Sprague, who's taken a bit of a break from putting out content. I know though, it's either both of them or one of them has covered off on that. And that kind of came and went very, very quickly. So I don't know more about that, unfortunately, the Gansey, Ganzi. So I don't know what happened with that. With Writers DG, Grant, you should come on my good friend's podcast, Rob Call, Typical Skeptic, The Truth Seeker. You'll be a great guest. You may have already been a guest before. Let me know if you're interested. He's a good guy. Always happy to have a conversation with anyone that's happy to have me on. I've never asked to be on anyone's podcast. I've always received invitations. So please feel free to either reach out to me or have him reach out to me. Be happy to have a chat if he would like to have me on, or you think I would be a worthy guest. So thank you for the suggestion. I think Skywatcher already knows more than what they will give over. It's a good point. I mean, I think they're obviously, they're packaging everything in a very, the production value of what they're packaging is incredible. They're putting it out in visually stunning documentary format. They're obviously a couple of, I would say they're probably 2 episodes down the road of what they've already put out, knowing just how documentaries work and the editing time and so on. So I think they've probably got a schedule of what they want to put out and how they want to put it out with what data they're able to collect. So that's why I think it will be interesting to watch what they do put out publicly throughout the rest of the year. You don't have to keep donating to Press Canadian, even though I certainly welcome it. And I appreciate the support. I'll be happy to flag and highlight any comments or questions that you put going forth. But really do appreciate your support. Skywatch can afford a helicopter, but not a decent broadcast 300mm lens. Okay. Yep, I know. A few folks. I mean, I'll be honest. When I saw Skywatcher Part 1, I thought, oh, this feels a little bit like they're trying to put something together that looks visually stunning and is engaging and thought-provoking, and they want to pitch it to like a History Channel to try and land a deal comparable with what the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch has achieved. That was my initial feeling. I kind of still have that a little bit in the back of my mind, but again, if they stay true to their word and they just put out the data that they're able to collect and have it peer-reviewed and scrutinized by the scientific community, I think that is an effort that should be applauded. And because I don't even know if I know Brandon Fugal has spoken about it, that he wants to get data peer-reviewed that he's collected, but I just don't know where they are on that endeavor. We're coming to the bottom of the comments, folks. Curazia Trooper Leclerc. There was a guy on YouTube that was using night vision over Melbourne. Cannot remember his channel. Think he caught a few unusual lights. Interesting. I don't know. I know there are a couple of researchers in Melbourne that have one does regular CE5. Another one I've never met. I can't remember his name, but I know there's a few folks that are out there and doing field research, trying to get some data. So, but I just haven't seen any of it. Tony D, welcome. Hi everyone. Question: what's your thoughts about AARO not having any data of the Tic Tacs? Is this true? Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the latest footage that Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp have put out, apparently Stephen Greenstreet, love him or hate him, he reached out to Susan Goff, the spokesperson, the public spokesperson for the DOD, or particularly DOD as it relates to UAP, and Susan Goff. No, I think it was the Navy. It might have been the Navy as well as Susan Goff. They, first and foremost, they didn't even confirm that the footage that was put out there by Corbell and Knapp was authentic. They didn't confirm its veracity. They didn't confirm it either way. They didn't confirm it was authentic or if it was a fabrication. And they didn't even confirm if there was an investigation going on to get to the bottom of who released that footage, if it was authentic footage and it was not authorized for release. And you have AARO not being aware of that footage. AARO not, Kirkpatrick has said in the past that there's really no additional data that could be located on the Nimitz incident of 2004, the Tic Tac incident, basically saying that all that is out there in the public domain is what they have, which is really odd. They don't have any of the radar data. And I mean, could that have all been purged and deleted in accordance with standard retention policies? Possibly. But do you think something of significant of that nature that that couldn't be explained, that interrupted live training exercises, you think they would keep that data for record keeping? I don't know. Jimmy's comments: the dog whistle tech that Skywatcher used to call said phenomena is classified. Why not open it up to everyone who has the time and the money to buy said equipment and try to engage phenomena? Yeah, I agree. Like, open source it. If they're so incredibly confident that their dog whistle, their mechanical asset that can engage the phenomenon, does work, well, why not open source it and let others that want to take a scientific approach use it? Now, I suspect it's because it's proprietary information. They probably place a dollar tag on that sensor suite, that IP, and they don't want to just let it out there because Jake Barber said that part of their endeavor is to be profitable. They do want to make a return on their investment. That doesn't necessarily mean that they want to make millions out of putting out data, but they obviously do, it costs money to do what they're doing, and they don't want to just rely exclusively on philanthropy and investors. They obviously, and if there are investors want a return on their investment as well. So it's a good question, though. I think it's one that's worth asking, because if as the Skywatcher team have said, that the dog whistle has produced has been successful 100% of the time, it's never failed, then holy shit, then that should be heavily scrutinized by the scientific community, and open source it. So even if you don't want to open source it to the entire populace, open source it so that other scientific institutions, other Galileo projects and the SCU and other scientific institutions that take the topic seriously and want to study it, have an appetite to study it, open source it to them so they can replicate it. The scientific method is all about being able to replicate the results. So I think that would be certainly something that is worthy of them considering. Short of Cook, well, James Fowler is now a new partner at Skywatcher. I don't remember who James Fowler is. Is that the? You might have to remind me on that one. Again, Depressed Canadian, thank you, my friend. Skywatcher is just enough info for a 12-episode season at this point. It's coming off like an expensive proof of concept TV series pitch and non-investigative. I have to agree with you to an extent. I too got that inkling when I watched the first episode, and even the second episode. But I'm going to reserve my full judgment until the end of the year, because that's when their goal is to have something undeniable by the end of this year. So if they can, and that's a pretty big claim, that's a bold claim to make. So if they can achieve that, then that might, that might reduce my fear that they're just, trying to get land a successful deal on, say, a History Channel or something like that. They might be trying to do both. Who knows? It's hard to tell, but I certainly don't blame you for thinking that, though, because I certainly thought it myself. Aussie was Depressed Canadian is rich. No, just incredibly generous. So thank you very much, Depressed Canadian, for your very generous contributions. We're writers, DG, I'm sorry, dude, from Vetted Podcast seems to be a sensationalist and only in it for the clicks and views, and countless times has put content out that just wasn't true, then had to backtrack. I mean, I think there have been a couple of episodes that Patrick's put out on Vetted where he got it wrong, but I think he's been pretty transparent in saying when he got it wrong. And that he at least corrected the record on the next episode. There was one instance where he didn't do that. I think it was about the what was it? I forget it now. But I can't blame you for having that thought. Having been on with Patrick and on Vetted, he had me on for an interview a while back now, and just back and forth engagement with the guy. I think he's obviously he does Vetted full time. That's his primary source of income. So all the power and credit to him if he can continue to put out good content that he finds interesting and that his audience finds interesting. I would just say keep your integrity as you do it, and don't just do it for the clicks and views. Don't turn into a Jay Anderson from Project Unity, who I have no time for as an engagement farmer. Mick West thinks Tic Tac UAPs are seagulls. I think he thinks a lot of things are seagulls. But we need folks we need the Mick Wests in this community. We just don't need. I think if Mick West was a little bit more open-minded and came out from that aspect, I think maybe it's the British side of him. I think that rubs off on folks the wrong way. I'm not too sure, but I think it's important to have folks like Mick West in the community, because when there is something that's blatantly fake or blatantly hoaxed, and he can call it out very quickly, I think that is valuable to the community. The MH370 is a perfect example of that. Yeah, he was one of the first folks to kind of just say, look, these are the reasons why ABC, that it's fake, and he laid it out black and white. And unfortunately, you've got a BS narrative that continues to be pushed, unfortunately, by someone that is just a slap in the face to the families of the victims of the M3H70 tragedy, unfortunately. And that's stuff that I completely despise. Depressed Canadian. Again, my friend, just needed to vent about some things and broke. Just angry. Well, please hold on to your dollars. You don't need to contribute any further. I do greatly appreciate it, though. I'm not doing this for the dollars. Every super chat that comes through goes back into the channel, because there are live streaming fees. You've got file storage services. I haven't got a return on my investment from doing the Unexplained Rundown. I do it because I love it, and I do it because I'm keen to put out what information I'm able to find out and secure. So Aaron's comment, Skywatch's CE5 seems more legit over Dr. Greer's, in which you have to pay for. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly more, it certainly comes from a much more scientific, the feel is it has a greater scientific lens behind it than CE5. I'll be open and admit I've never done CE5. I downloaded the CE5 app and had a look at it and said, "Oh fuck, I'm not giving this a crack." But I might be open to changing my mind and go out with someone that's done CE5 and has claimed to have success with it. I don't discount it. I haven't done it myself. I can't even, I try and meditate, and after 2 minutes, my mind's racing on something else. So mindfulness is not something that I'm traditionally very, very good at. Shorter Cook one, the work what Skywatcher seems to be doing has already been done by other labs. I'm not seeing research, I'm seeing testing. That's a fair comment. Again, I'm kind of interested to see how they progress throughout the rest of the year and where they go, because I think we'll be able to tell, hopefully relatively quickly, if they're pulling everyone's chain, or if they're actually capturing some truly anomalous stuff that's worthy of further scientific scrutiny and scientific analysis, via peer review. Still going, my friend, Depressed Canadian. Skeptics are the most important part of this thing. They need to be included in the discussion. Completely agree. Disinformation is a genuine problem in the political space. Disinformation, misinformation is unfortunately rampant within ufology and the UFO community. So yeah, we do need skeptics, and some are more hardline skeptics than others. I again come from a very skeptical mind, but I'm also open to possibilities as well. But I need to see evidence, and I don't think, unfortunately, we have seen the evidence that's been put out there to date is certainly interesting and compelling, but it's not definitive. It's not. You can poke holes in it, and I think you need evidence from a lot of different data points that will help certainly get me across the line. I mean, I think there's something to the UAP topic. Absolutely. What it is, I honestly have no idea. I've never had my own experience, so I come at it from a very skeptical lens. Whether others that have had an experience, that might contribute to their bias. So my bias is that I haven't had an experience, and that I do come at it one eyebrow raised kind of lens, where others that have had an experience might come at it from another angle. Ross should do more interviews on this channel than the others who would tell him things he would want to hear. He needs to hear more truly skeptical voices. I mean, to Ross's credit, he certainly has a good cross-section of folks that he has interviewed on Reality Check. He seems to have a very interesting and diverse mix of folks on. Some guests I know, some I don't know at all. like the Tedesco brothers, for example. Never heard of them before Ross had them on. So it was interesting for me to learn something new from those guys. Short order, quick one. Are they getting 100% success rate? And if they are the craft they're calling in ours? It was the jellyfish that Fowler said seemed aggressive. That may not be ours. Yeah, they're with their with the dog whistle. They're saying they're having a 100% success rate, and they've observed the 9 classes of UAP. I did find it interesting that the classic flying saucer shape was not included in their classification system of 9. But that could be, as Ross and others have said, that maybe they just haven't got enough data at the moment to kind of put them in a position where to add a flying saucer shape to, I mean, they've got other shapes, cigar and manta ray kind of shapes, but nothing of the classic flying saucer. And I put on, I think on X not too long ago, how come no one's seeing flying saucers anymore? Why are they so retro all of a sudden? You really don't hear a whole lot about, I mean, maybe you do, and I just am not aware of it, but, it seems like in the 50s and 60s, all the classic UFOs that were photographed were flying saucers in shape. Now, could that be because they were all BS? They're all hoaxes. They're all a work of someone throwing actual saucers up into the in the air and photographing it. Or is it that we just haven't had? I mean, other people have speculated that the phenomenon manifests itself in ways that is congruent with the culture of our time. Like it's now all about orbs, and in 2004, Tic Tacs, and you had now we're at jellyfish as well. So I have no idea. I really don't. But I do find it interesting that you don't really see photos these days or stories about classic flying saucer in shape. Certainly, the Westall flying saucer incident of April 1966, which I've covered extensively on this channel, classic flying saucer in shape. I personally don't hear a lot of Tic Tac. Of flying saucers these days. It's very much Tic Tacs, orbs, jellyfish and so on. Depressed Canadian has said, I'm sorry, but seriously, this team of retired Navy SEALs can't afford a telephoto lens, but they can replicate a CNN or 60 Minutes news package. No, they're lying, but the community is a bit too timid. Yeah, I mean, it's Skywatcher is, you can understand why I think a lot of people have kind of looked at them with a half-raised eyebrow when they came on the scene. They kind of came out of nowhere, and now they've got this obviously very well-established investor out of who operates the SALT. Was it the SALT conference? SALT Foundation? No, the SALT. He runs the SALT conference, and he's one of their primary backers, or he's heavily involved in the project. So, they're obviously getting quite a bit of money to do what they do. But yeah, it does, I come back to the thing I was saying before. Their first episode looked incredibly polished, and it was kind of like screaming for maybe to pitch a deal to a History Channel or a Discovery Channel. I don't know. I really don't know. That's why I think it'll be interesting to see what they put out before the year is out. Shorter quick one, they put the flying saucer apparently under the manta ray classification. Fair call. Yep. You could kind of consider it that sort of being that same sort of shape. Jasmine, what if it was because their technology got better? Yeah, that's another argument I've heard, that, saucer from the 1940s and 50s, well, 70, 80 years has gone by. Have they evolved? But you think, though, that if the counter argument I thought of that was if they're so many thousands of years advanced of us, I can only think of it from a human point of view, can't I? I mean, like 80 years to an advanced civilization, non-human intelligence that is maybe, again, my assumption is thousands of years ahead of us. 80 years is just a piece of sand, isn't it? And for that to be such a very short period of time, but to be such a significant change in morphology, in 80 years. The nuts and bolts saucer craft to now orbs and jellyfish, more living and breathing in nature rather than tangible nuts and bolts. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing out loud, but it's an interesting point as well. So I think, Jasmine, it's certainly a point to consider. Holy moly, you're gonna be your bank account is going to be empty, my friend. So please, please stop donating. I'll be the first to say I appreciate your generous contributions, but I don't want you to be. I want you to be able to put food on the table, so you don't have to keep contributing financially. But it is greatly appreciated. I think Ross might be an executive producer on the Skywatcher series next year. He and other authorities need pushback. Probably why he's not seeking pushback and is denigrating critics. Anyways, thank you for truly taking my venting. You're always welcome to vent your thoughts and comments here. I will always play as long as they're not, disrespectful to people in the chat or others in the community. I will certainly, if it's got a little bit of a playful tone to it, no problem. But I'll always put up dissenting views as well as views that are maybe in alignment with my belief system, which again is coming from a skeptical side. The data point for the 100% success rate with the dog whistle, have they released any data of times of the day, night for this claim? It's a good point, and I think they said is that the dog whistle, I could be wrong here, but maybe it's one of the classes of UAP that they've seen. They've all been in daytime, or it could be that they've used the dog whistle and they've had 100% success rate in daytime. It was one of those. I can't remember which one it was. I honestly don't know. Telekinetic, good to see you here, my friend. Suspect on Skywatcher's jellyfish thing. Thoughts on Grusch 2.0? Yeah, the jellyfish is an interesting one. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can really discern anything from what they've put out thus far, other than the fact that, hey, that looks interesting. Be nice to get a bit more data on that. I mean, I think it was Mick West that put up a Steadicam shot of an actual balloon that had a tail string, and how if that was filmed at a distance that was incredibly shaky camera, so it wasn't stabilized, kind of out of focus. It's not inconceivable to think that, well, a balloon could be misidentified as jellyfish. I honestly don't know. I think what they've captured, though, is interesting, and I certainly think it requires further scientific scrutiny and further worthy of further investigation based on the claims that they're making. So, that's why I say I'm not going to judge them harshly at this point. I, if anything, applaud them for trying to capture data and put that out into the public domain for people to review, for it to be peer reviewed and for it to be scrutinized. So I'm still very much watching with interest, but undecided on what they've captured thus far. Let's just have a look at some of the other comments. I'm pretty sure I've got through to all of them. Again, thank you. Officially drunk. Oh, no. Well, if you need any returns on your donations, Depressed Canadian, feel free to hit me up tomorrow and I'll see what you can do, because you've been incredibly generous, but I don't want you to be out of pocket if you've been doing this inebriated. But either way, your contributions are greatly appreciated. I saw the classic flying saucer shape in the 80s and something very, very different in the 90s. So I've often wondered about that. Yeah, you raised an interesting point there before, Jazz, about, could their technology evolve over time? Again, just worthy of putting it out there. Grant, what do you think about the talk coming from the White House regarding the time travel and new physics? I think that was, I don't think, like them being, they're saying we now have the technology that we can manipulate time and space or something to that effect. I don't think they were meaning what we wanted them to mean, or what the UFO community thought it meant. I think they were talking about more prosaic technologies in general, whether it be internet technology, satellite. I really don't know, but and Ross has said this, I think, I don't think it was in relation to the UFO topic. I think it was just more broadly speaking about innovation and technology in general. So, but I mean, I'd love to be wrong, but that was just, I didn't invest a whole lot of stock in it, but above and beyond that, that's what I thought it was in relation to. One last thought: if Ross is wrong, how or would there be any pushback? How can you prove a UFO journalist wrong? I think, like anything, if someone puts something out there, whether it's a claim or if reporting is inaccurate, if it's inadvertent inaccuracy, it should be corrected. If there is data to the contrary that is in contrast to what's been put out, or if it's done intentionally, it needs to be called out. I mean, classic example. I put out my first episode of. I'm doing a multi-part series on an expose of Stephen Greenstreet. It's titled "We Need to Talk About Greenstreet," and the first episode's called "The Golden Rule," calling out Stephen Greenstreet's doxing of a source. And that's, the golden rule of journalism is you protect your sources. You don't reveal the identity of your source unless your source has consented for you to do so. So, that was with respect, and, the information that he put out, I was able to call him out on it and show basically that he had, he had broken the golden rule of investigative journalism. So I think that's the kind of thing that I like to see, like with Dr. Stephen Greer's claims that he briefed a former Australian Minister for Defence. Well, show us the money, mate. Show us the evidence to support that claim. And if you can't provide the evidence, well, I'm going to try and find as much as I can that supports that claim or refutes it. So if I found documentary evidence that supports Dr. Stephen Greer's claim that he did brief the Australian Minister for Defence in 2013, well, that goes completely against the position of the Royal Australian Air Force, Australian Department of Defence, is that, since 1996, we haven't had an interest in this topic. And then you've got the Minister for Defence being briefed in 2013. If so, why? Why are you taking an interest in the topic and doing it in such a closed-door, clandestine fashion when you've said there's nothing to this topic? Move along, folks, nothing to see here. So that's one. If that was what I was able to show through documentary evidence, I would have put that out there. But I haven't been able to find any documentary evidence to support Stephen Greer's claim. So I'm of the position currently that I'm very suspect of Dr. Stephen Greer's claim that he engaged the former Australian Minister for Defence, Stephen Smith. Because I have not found any evidence to date that supports that claim. I've only found evidence that refutes it. So there you go. Last few Aussie was, I'm often wondered about the issue of shapes of UFOs changing over decades, and how stupid was it that it was only a couple of years ago that in documents that John Greenwald secured for release through FOIA, that shapes were classified, like common shapes of UAP were classified. Now, granted, obviously some of those shapes might pertain to black budget tech or top secret technology, but I mean, come on, and now they're not. Now you have since then, obviously, AARO has put out its breakdown of what the most common morphologies are of UAP. But for a while back, it was, I don't know if it was in the UAP task force days, that common shapes related to UAP were classified. Give me a break. That's ridiculous. I think we're pretty much up to date, folks. Jimmy, Jasmine, possibly the phenomenon ties into what we can process and make it made sense to Mindfork, Kashi, Chris, great to see you, my friend. I know it's early on your side of the pond. Thank you for joining, as always. If those of you that are joining, if you're not familiar with the fun show that Akashi Chris puts on with Mindfork. Check it out on YouTube. She does put out some fun stuff. I was on with her a while back, just reminiscing. We kind of came up together in the UFO space, and now do our own thing, which is fun. So great to see you here as always, Akashi. Telekinetic, good points on more data needed. It's positive. Skywatcher is releasing some data, and yes, need more analysis. I joined chat late. Sorry, maybe you've covered Grusch already. We'll catch up soon. Grusch 2.0, if you want to elaborate on that telekinetic, because I don't think Grusch 2.0 comment, I didn't. If you've got a specific question or comment pertaining to Grusch, I'm happy to speak to it or open it up for commentary in the chat. The shapes were classified in the 1940s, might even be earlier than that. I have a document somewhere. Interesting. Love you too, Akashi. Chris, great to see you. Thank you for joining as always, my friend. So thank you all so much for your comments, and Depressed Canadian, thank you for yours. Hopefully you don't have too bad a hangover tomorrow and you look at your bank account. But like I said, hit me up if you do want to get back some of your generous contributions, because you've certainly gone well and truly above and beyond, my friend. So let's now segue, and we'll just dive into, after our lead story, always like to dive in to the rundown, kind of give you a rundown of things that have been happening close to home and abroad. So what we might start off with is kind of keeping to the theme of the Five Eyes. So only a few days ago, Ross was on with Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, and was talking about Five Eyes engagement on this topic. So I'll play this clip for you, and I'll just provide some comments on the other side. So this is link is in the description below. If you haven't watched this interview with Ross, feel free. He's on for about an hour, and then Jimmy is on his own for the rest of the hour. So feel free to have a look if you haven't already seen it. So this is from. Let me just play this for you. There we go. See if I can pull this up. There we go. So this is Ross on with Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, only a few days ago.
Who do the right thing, working in national security and defense for good reason in America. I mean, the world's an incredibly dangerous place right now. We need a solid, firm defense. And
we do.
You know, America has been the leader of the free world for the last 80 years since the end of World War II. And my country, Australia, has a strong defense alliance with America. And I know I've got many good friends who work in the ADF and the Australian Defence Force. And, you know, they're really proud of the Five Eyes Alliance, where we have a very close intelligence sharing relationship, including, by the way, on UAPs, despite what my government says. So, yeah, I mean, there are really, one of the things I think a lot of the audience out there perhaps doesn't understand is there's a kind of a devil-may-care anarchy in the UAP community that says publish and be damned. And I'm not one of those people. And frankly, some people think that I have a responsibility to just publish everything I know, name names, you know, out people. And frankly, not only is that illegal, it would also compromise, I think, very sensitive national security secrets that I think are actually important and worth preserving. And I think the pressure will be applied in good time on government to do the right thing and tell the public the truth. And I actually suspect that's going to come sooner rather than later.
So I think Ross was adding some comments there specifically pertaining to a question he got asked from Jimmy about the UFO so massive they had to build a building over it. So two things in those that comment from Ross. I think he's right on the money in that the Australian government is really putting out a position that the UAP topic is for the US. We don't actively have an interest in it. We don't have any recording protocols within Australia. All of our current, safety measures and reporting measures are sufficient to capture reports of UAP. I disagree with that completely. And we know that Australia has been engaged on the topic since 2023 with AARO, 2024, and I'm hoping to show that with FOIA documents if I get back an agenda, presentation, materials, and minutes from AARO's 2024 briefing. And I suspect that even in the UAP task force days, there was, and Ross has mentioned this actually when he was on with Sky News Australia, that the UAP task force briefed the Five Eyes in 2021, 2022. I would not be surprised if the Australian intelligence community has been very engaged on this topic in terms of intelligence sharing, even though the Australian government is basically pouring cold water over the topic and saying it's just a US issue. There's nothing for us to worry about. No safety of flight concerns, no national security issues. Move along, folks, nothing to see here. So, and to his second point, he was talking about not revealing information that would jeopardize a source, national security information. I completely agree with and can, what's the word I'm looking for? It hits close to home with what Ross is saying there, because there's information that I've received that I have not been able to independently verify, that I've chosen not to put out because I think it would be disingenuous. It would be disrespectful to the source or sources that provided me with that information. And I'm not going to just half-heartedly and foolishly put out information that's going to potentially jeopardize the identity, the security, the welfare, the well-being of a source. And I'm trying to, the information that I've received, I'm trying to get independent verification on that information before I put it out. So there are stories and projects that I'm working on in the background, one that I've been working on now for 2+ years, or almost 2 years. You can probably take a guess what that relates to, that I'm trying to verify with documentary evidence before I put that information out. So I do respect and agree with Ross's sentiments there with what he's referring to.
People who...
Oops, let me turn that out. We'll get rid of that. So let's now move away from Ross on Fade to Black, because it just had that Five Eyes, that Five Eyes link there. The big news that came out only recently, Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who heads up the task force on federal secrets. Big news. This was only, less than a week ago. Here's a tentative timeline for the House Oversight investigation into UAPs. This inquiry into UAPs has been the biggest bipartisan intragovernmental investigation in U.S. history. We look forward to the upcoming investigations and want to give a special thank you to Mr. David Grusch for providing advice to us. We know that David Grusch is now a staffer for Representative Eric Burleson, providing him with counsel and guidance on how to navigate the UAP topic from the House Oversight Committee's perspective. So this is the timeline that we're talking about. This is what Representative Anna Paulina Luna has put out as part of the Federal Secrets Task Force, April 29, so end of this month. There, and we covered this in our last episode last month, a skiff briefing with UAP experts. I'm not too sure why they decided to use that vernacular, but we know based on the reporting from Matt Laszlo, Ask a Poll, support his work. He does some great work getting some wonderful insights and commentary from congressmen and women in the U.S. Capitol as they're coming and going to meetings. So we know that there is a skiff briefing scheduled later this month on UAP with Luis Elizondo, David Grusch, Christopher Mellon, and AARO. So I would take that to mean, at a minimum, Dr. John Kosloski. Now, my understanding is David Grusch has not sat down with AARO to date to reveal what he knows. Now, whether to what level of detail or depth he will go into at this skiff briefing, Who knows? But at least that's promising that he is now going to be sitting down with AARO in the room, Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo. The fact that that's in a skiff, we're not going to get much out of it, but I'm sure that Representative Anna Paulina Luna will share some information or what she can at an unclassified level on that front. So that's happening end of this month. And then you have, in the days after, a roundtable with experts, officials, and members of Congress. Now, that is an event that's sponsored by the UAP Disclosure Fund. Now, this was a post that they put out. It was a bit of a long one, so I've chopped the date and time off there, so apologies on that one, but you'll find it on their X feed. Save the date, May 1. We are pleased to announce a first of its kind UAP policy event for members of Congress, their staff, and the public, understanding UAP, science, national security, and innovation. This nonpartisan briefing, hosted by the UAPDF and sponsored by the Bipartisan Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets, will provide members with valuable insights into the scientific significance, national security relevance, and innovation potential of UAP-related data. More info to come. Let me move my mouse here. So, and this was obviously the banner graphic that they used for that upcoming event. So that's an interesting one, and let's use that to jump into have a look at the press release or the announcement that the UAP Disclosure Fund put out. This was on, this is scheduled for May 1st. About the briefing in an era of accelerating aerospace and AI innovation, understanding understanding unidentified anomalous UAP. Let me try that again. In an era of accelerating, the goggles are coming on. In an era of accelerating aerospace and AI innovation, understanding unidentified anomalous phenomena UAP is no longer fringe. It is foundational. Join members of Congress, staff, and the media for a high-level, science-first discussion moderated by Luis Elizondo, former head of the Pentagon's UFO program, or UAP program, featuring prominent voices in science, defense, and technology. This nonpartisan briefing, hosted by UAPDF and sponsored by the Bipartisan Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets, will provide members with valuable insights into the scientific significance, national security relevance, and innovation potential of UAP-related data. A limited number of seats will be available to members of the public, and the event will live streamed and recorded. That is very interesting. So it's going to be in the Rayburn House office building. I think that is where we've seen a lot of the briefings take place thus far from the House Oversight Committee. And these are the folks that are going to be in attendance. Moderating the discussions, or the panel discussion, will be Lou Elizondo. You've got panelists on the science side, Dr. Avi Loeb and Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, both offering some valuable contributions from obviously their respective areas of expertise. National Security Panel, Christopher Mellon, Kirk McConnell, who I find is a very interesting individual, former senior professional staff member for the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committee. He did a really interesting sit-down interview with Jesse Michaels only recently, so feel free to check that out if you haven't seen it. The Innovation Panel, Anna Brady Estefez, not familiar with her. Mike Gold, who we know testified at the most recent House Oversight Committee hearing, former NASA Associate Administrator. Why it matters. This moment represents a tipping point. Bipartisan legislation, media coverage, and credible whistleblower testimony have made UAP a serious matter of government transparency, strategic innovation, and public trust. The UAP Disclosure Fund is proud to lead this effort, providing Congress with trusted briefings, supporting whistleblowers, and advocating for responsible public disclosure. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening within the next couple of weeks. I think that's going to be quite an interesting event. It'll no doubt be while we down under are sleeping, but I'll be sure to try and cover it if not in its entirety, in brief on the Unexplained Rundown. So then let's come back to, again, Anna Paulina Luna's timeline. And we can see, now that's just happening at the end of the month or start of May. Then you have commencing the week of May 12, another full committee hearing on UAPs. Now, this will officially be the not counting the roundtable that the UAP Disclosure Fund is kind of organizing, but the week of 12 May, this will be the 6th hearing on UAP in the last 3 years. I mean, think of that. The 6th hearing on UAP in just the last 3 years. Now, hopefully, you would think that we're going to start to get the ball moved a little bit further down the road, because we don't want dribs and drabs. And I mean, I would love to see the needle really move on this topic. And I think we're all spoiled with David Grusch coming out and him testifying before the House Oversight Committee in 2023. Again, whilst he is not maybe the first-hand primary witness that we all had hoped for, he still put out a lot of information based on his 4 years of investigations and 4 years of interviewing 40 witnesses over that period. He put forth a lot of very interesting information that hadn't been maybe put out there to that same degree prior. So I think we were very fortunate with David Grusch coming out, and we've been disappointed that since 2023 you haven't really had Congress kind of moving the football down the field a bit further. So hopefully, you would want to think now that David Grusch is a key staffer for Representative Eric Burleson, and is going to be providing a way forward plan, counsel guidance. One would think that you're going to be getting some pretty interesting questions being asked at this hearing in the week of 12 May, and maybe even very interesting witnesses as well. And the Liberation Times, I won't read through the entire article, but if you want to read it yourself, Chris Sharp over at the Liberation Times kind of did an article on this hearing that has been announced for May. So if you want to read up on that, feel free. Kind of goes into in a bit more detail on what we've just talked about. See if there's any quotes that are worth. I'll just read this one. So Representative Burleson. This is interesting. So last week, speaking on the UAP Unidentified Alien podcast, that was by Stephen Diner. That's his podcast. Representative Burleson stated that Grusch had provided House Oversight members with the names of 20 officials who are read in to classified UAP programs. Burleson added, he gave us an indication of which ones will be hostile and which ones will not. Some people we may have to subpoena. Now that tells me a very interesting point, that perhaps some of these hostile and friendly witnesses that Grusch has put forward to Burleson, who will obviously be shared with the wider task force, those folks will be called to testify, or maybe even subpoenaed to testify. And wouldn't that be very interesting? Reacting to today's UAP announcement by Representative Lou Elizondo, previously read the Pentagon's UAP investigation known as ATIP, told Liberation Times, I can say unequivocally that Luna and her colleagues are taking the UAP topic extremely seriously. This should be considered a big win for disclosure advocates. I'm confident more information will be provided by her team after the meetings. So check out that article if you haven't read it. Chris Sharp does, I think, a really good job of providing folks with up-to-date with what's going on, not just in Congress, but obviously on the areas of interest that he's been keeping a close eye on and reporting on. So that kind of brings me to, well, who do we think will potentially be called to testify at this hearing? And so this is where we can kind of speculate. I put a post out there, calling out to Representative Anna Portolina Luna, saying, will you call these folks to testify on UAP at a future task force hearing? And from left to right, top row from left, we've got Admiral Tom Wilson of the Wilson Davis memo saga. We have in the middle, top row, James Lakatsky, lead of ORSAP. You have top right, Jay Stratton, also of the ORSAP program and the first director of the UAP task force. Bottom row from right to left, you've got Hal Puthoff, also involved in ORSAP. In the middle on the bottom, you've got Colm Kelleher, also kind of like the second in charge of ORSAP. And at the bottom left, you have Eric Davis, all of ORSAP as well. So ORSAP is heavily represented in this post that I put out. But so while I would be interested to learn from you guys who you would like to see testify, be called to testify, or subpoenaed to testify, I certainly know who I would like to be called to testify. And it is, to kind of give you a hint, let me play a clip for you. This is Mike Gallagher talking at the first, his line of questioning at the first UAP hearing in May 2022, a couple of years back. So this will kind of give you a hint as to who I would love to see called to testify or subpoenaed to testify if need be.
Are you aware of a document that appeared around 2019, sometimes called the Admiral Wilson Memo or EW Notes Memo?
I am not.
You're not.
I'm not personally aware of that.
Okay. This is a document in which, again, I'm not commenting on the veracity. I was hoping you would help me with that, in which a former head of DIA claims to have had a conversation with the Dr. Eric Wilson and claims to have sort of been made aware of certain contractors or DoD programs that he tried to get fuller access to and was denied access to. So you're not aware of that?
I'm not aware, Congressman.
In my 10 seconds remaining, then, I guess I just would ask, Mr. Chairman, unanimous consent to enter that memo into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
So, for me, the two folks that I would love to see called to testify, it comes as no surprise then that you're probably thinking that I would like to see both Admiral Tom Wilson and Eric Davis called to testify. Why? Because the Wilson-Davis memo was formally entered into the congressional record by Mike Gallagher there you saw in May 2022. And to date, neither Thomas Wilson nor Eric Davis have testified in open session under oath before Congress to date. And so I think these two gentlemen, they both can't be telling the truth, right? Eric Davis has, in recent months, I believe, or within the last year, confirmed that he did, in fact, author the Wilson-Davis memo because he was very cagey on it. He didn't want to talk about it for a long time. And he claims that what is in that memo is accurate. And I believe Thomas Wilson was asked the question about it at one stage, and he denied it. So he denied that the meeting ever took place. So if Thomas Wilson is saying, no, never happened, Eric Davis saying it did happen, they both can't be telling the truth, right? So if there may be an opportunity to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, separate the fact from the fiction and find out who's lying. And if it's Eric Davis that's lying, well, then that ruins, I think, his credibility going forward. If it is Thomas Wilson that's lying, then there is the there to what is in Eric Davis's Wilson-Davis memo. Now, how do we get to the bottom of the truth and find out that they're lying? Well, maybe, hopefully, through some very clever line of questioning by congressmen and women at a hearing, and or if Eric Davis, if they're testifying under oath, and which means under penalty of perjury, if they lie before Congress under oath, then they can get into some serious trouble. Now, prosecuting someone on perjury is sometimes a little harder than it seems, and not a lot of folks have been convicted of it. There have been, a number over the decades past, and some people have had heavy jail sentences, but it's not something that is usually heavily enforced or prosecuted. But nonetheless, you would think that if these gentlemen are both patriots and they're going to testify under oath, just maybe we might get a little closer to the truth on the Wilson Davis memo, because I think that opens up a lot of possibilities for further lines of questioning on the whole allegations of waste, fraud, and abuse, obstruction of congressional oversight, these claims of crash retrieval programs and reverse engineering programs. These are two folks that I would love to see testify and for us to finally put to bed the Wilson Davis memo. So who knows? Will we see them testify? It would be nice to see them testify. I honestly don't know who Anna Paul Luna has up her sleeve, though. Before we go on to another topic, let me just share with you. So I receive an email from the New Paradigm Institute. I'm on their distribution list, and it's an email from Danny Sheen, who heads up the New Paradigm Institute. And what I found interesting in this email is he put, while I was in Washington, D.C. this past week, I had the opportunity to meet directly with David Grusch. Grusch shared with me that he is currently working to assemble a dedicated UAP expert for each of the 11 members of the Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets, with the ultimate goal of forming an official UAP working group inside the task force. This represents a bold and strategic move forward, and we're honored to be playing an active role in this process. As part of this growing collaboration, we'll also help craft and circulate a congressional transparency pledge. This pledge is a formal commitment that lawmakers will be asked to sign, declaring their support for full transparency on UFO UAP related matters. We'll publicly report which members sign the pledge and which do not. This news comes as Grusch officially joins Representative Burleson, as we kind of talked about. So I found that very interesting that Grusch is trying to secure your dedicated UAP personnel, UAP expert for each of the 11 members that can help inform the lines of inquiry and questions for each of the 11 members. It sounds like there's a hell of a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to. So I think May is going to be a really interesting month on obviously this briefing that's being organized and endorsed by the UAP Disclosure Fund, and then you obviously have a full House committee hearing starting in the week of the 12th. So yeah, we'll certainly be covering it on the Unexplained Rundown, that's for sure. No, a lot of you have had some comments that have come through as I've been talking away there. So Mindfolk, so I need the rundown because I don't trust most of reporting right now. I need credible sources without agenda. Get your rundown. Thank you, Akashi Chris. Telekinetic, Grusch working with AARO, cooperative and hostile witness list. Will subpoenas be realized? Are you optimistic for any disclosure progress? I certainly think it is promising that David Grusch is now going to be sitting down in a skiff with AARO. Hopefully that's Dr. John Kosloski. I know that David Grusch's concerns in the past were that AARO was not able to provide him with the guarantees that he needed or wanted, or his legal team wanted him to secure for them to feel comfortable for him to sit down with AARO in a skiff. So how we've got to this point where Grusch is going to sit down with AARO as well as Christopher Mullen and Lou Elizondo in a skiff, I would love to know the background on how we got to that. But I think that's promising. And I think the fact that, per Burleson's comments, that Grusch has now provided a list of 20 folks that are maybe hostile and or friendly witnesses that can be potentially called or subpoenaed to testify. I think that's pretty significant. So it's going to be interesting to watch this space. Aaron, thank you. You're very smart in protecting your sources along with Ross. Yeah, I mean, if someone entrusts their information with me and asks me to keep them anonymous, I'll respect that. I'm not a journalist, but I respect that golden rule of journalism that you don't reveal any information about your source that could jeopardize their identity, their security, their well-being, whatever it might be. I'm not going to publicly disclose how I got information or the name of someone that provided information when I haven't been authorized to do that. If someone gives me information and they're quite comfortable for me to share with the world how I got that information, I will. If I get it through FOIA, I'll disclose that I got it through FOIA, because that is an avenue that's available to all of us. We have a right to information. But if a source entrusts me with information and they do it requesting anonymity, then I will respect that at all times. Yes, some of us try to have integrity, not like Stephen Greenstreet, and we'll talk about that in a short while. If you are not, you don't know what I'm referring to. Let's have a look at some of the comments. Yes, as we've kind of touched on, Project Grusch has handed over 20 names. Yep, so kind of just touched on that. So that will be very interesting. Always seems to be Lou, Chris Mellon, and Gallaudet when it comes to the official sources. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a bit of a disappointment for some. The most recent House Oversight hearing where you had Gallaudet, Elizondo, Schellenberger, and Mike Gold. I think we were spoiled with Grusch, David Fravor, and Ryan Graves in 2023. I think that kind of set the bar really high. And last year's hearing just didn't get close, unfortunately. So I'll certainly be watching with great interest on what Anna Paulina Luna puts out with the hearing next month. Jimmy, getting back to Ross Coulthart for a brief minute. If I remember correctly, Ross states in a recent podcast that a previous very senior politician saw a UFO himself. Would love to know more. Good thing you mentioned that, Jimmy, because we'll be covering off on that in just a moment. So, Depressed Canadian, thank you again. Seriously, a hearing without Tim Burchett's Doug or Shucks opening stand-up comedy act would be better. Yes, he certainly has a ton of one-liners up his sleeve. That is certainly for sure. Jimmy would love to see those folks that I showed on screen testify under oath. Jay Stratton, I certainly agree, would be able to add some very interesting contributions. The fact that he was the director of the UAP task force, and obviously what David Grusch was able to information and he was able to source, that would have been shared obviously with Jay Stratton. So I am sure that Jay Stratton knows a hell of a lot of information that would be of value for the general public. You could even add Dr. Gary Nolan to the list. How Putoff, some have keen for him to. Yes, Timothy E. Taylor, the operating under the shroud of mystery and secrecy. That guy would be very interesting to hear from if he ever decided to go public, because he keeps popping up time and time again, and very, very little known about him. So I certainly agree with you on that point, Jimmy. Telekinetic, great points. Wilson Davis memo fully entered in Congressional record. Killer point. We need Grant on a plane to the States ASAP. Help them organize the next hearing. Far out, I tell you, I would love to be able to get to a hearing and just be there in the moment, in the room where it all happened. It's one thing to watch a live stream or to watch a documentary. It's another thing to be there on the ground and amongst it all. And that's why I found being on site at Westall so incredibly valuable when I decided to do a documentary, because it just gives you that whole other layer of appreciation and perspective. So I would love to just attend. I would love to attend a UAP briefing in the US, or even just a UFO conference, just to be amongst it. And it's certainly an electric feeling when you're amongst like-minded folks. A conversation topic that we obviously take seriously. I think it would be a lot of fun, but also very, very, very interesting as well. So let's keep the ball rolling. Let's move on to, even though folks probably don't want to hear about AARO, let's hear what AARO has been up to. So on the 18th of April, they put out a post on X saying, last week, AARO launched an electronic FOIA reading room that contains responsive documents to FOIA requests relating to the office since its establishment in July 2022. You'll find a couple of documents on there that I've secured for release. Most of them you'll find that John Greenwald has secured for release, and a couple of others. I won't bore you with with the reading room, but let me show you. I'll just jump over to AARO's site. Link is in the description below. If you want to have a look at their reading room, you can. Let me zoom in, see if it's a bit easier on the eyes there. Basically just goes through and goes through in kind of a chronological order what the request was, fiscal year. So this is the most recent one. Someone asked for an organizational chart of individuals associated with the all domain. I actually asked for that, but this came out. Actually, you know what? Let's see what that one is. Yeah, so someone actually beat me to the punch and requested that before I did. So the response letter I got was actually a link to that release file. But you can go through these. Actually, you know what? I think that was the one that was the one that I asked for. Yeah, that was my one. But I think it's the same. Ends up being the same same document. I'm just going to have a look at them both. It is. Yeah, it's the same document. It's just a different. It's just a different file name. So that's my one at the very top. But it was requested also before me in 2024. There you can see AARO records pertaining to Five Eyes Caucus working group meeting. So I've got a couple in here that I did. Just some interesting. I haven't gone through all of the documents that have been released pertaining to FOIA for AARO, but interesting nonetheless. Now, why I mention FOIA's reading room is John Greenwald, who again does a hell of a job, has been at it for a long time on the FOIA side. He put out a really good point on X. He said, "Can you, AARO, address the growing number of outstanding requests that I and many others have, instead of blanket denying everything under FOIA exemption B7, which is kind of like a law enforcement, excuse me, kind of like a law enforcement, they're citing your law enforcement proceedings, everything under FOIA exemption B7, which has no legal justification. A reading room with a few pages, not transparency. This is a problem." John has a very good point there, because AARO has never addressed why they're exempting, often making blanket exemptions of entire requests due to this B7 without providing any legal justification for the application of that exemption. So just an interesting point that I found John made. Let's now transition to some news close to home. I had the good fortune of attending the 59th anniversary of the Westall flying saucer incident earlier this month, 6th of April. It was all primary witnesses get together at the Grange, which is about a kilometre south of Westall, the school. And I got there a little late on the day because they bloody had a fun run over across the Balti Bridge, and I was in traffic for ridiculous amounts of time. Anyway, family and I got down there. We're able to get amongst it all, hear from some folks that I hadn't heard from before. They were kind of telling their stories, and got to see a lot of folks that I did know and I have regular contact and engagement with, and even had some folks come up and introduce themselves. So it was great to get amongst it and see some folks. Why I show you this clip, a few days prior to the Westall reunion event, Westall primary witness Marilyn Smith, who as a 12-year-old went as Marilyn Eastwood when she was a student, was on Sunrise, and they were asking her questions about her what she witnessed on the 6th of April 1966, and talking about the reunion event. So let me play this clip for you. So if you haven't seen it, you can just gain an appreciation.
Will be the 59th anniversary of one of Australia's most famous unsolved mysteries. The Westall UFO sightings.
On April 6, 1966, around 150 students and some staff of Westall High School and Westall State School claim they saw one or more flying saucers hovering overhead. The objects then descended into a paddock where witnesses say they found circular patches in the grass. Joining us now, Marilyn Smith, who was only 14 years old when she witnessed the Westall UFO. Thanks for joining us. Describe what you saw, Marilyn.
Yes, in classroom, some child came in and screamed out, "There's a flying saucer." We all bolted out of the classroom, out into the oval, looked up in the sky. For myself personally, it was just hovering several metres in the air above a tower. It was a silver shape. It was about the size of 3 to 4 cars, flat underneath, a domey shape on top. It was just hovering. Absolutely awestruck, and it just turned on its side and just went straight up, gone. And then over a period of time, it came back and hovered around the whole oval. It moved from place to place. Apparently there were 3. Some of us, most of the school was hysterical, to be honest with you, 400 kids. And we're just running around chasing this thing basically, and totally hysterical. Yeah. So
Marilyn,
it was,
one of the theories is that it was a runaway balloon from a nearby high altitude balloon project, but you don't believe that?
this has been going around for a long time. It was no balloon, trust me. It was a UFO. It was some sort of spacecraft. I've never seen anything move so fast in my life. And it's just given me no one will ever change my mind what I saw. And I'm not the only one, of course. There's thousands of us who believe that these days. But it was just an incredible, experience.
And you're right, a lot of people around the world absolutely believe exactly what you're saying. Marilyn, thank you very much for joining us and explaining your story and showing us your sketch.
Oh, the condescending tone from Natalie Barr there at the end. Thanks for showing us your sketch. I mean, for fuck's sake, you always play the bloody X-Files theme. That's what shits me to tears, and I get fired up and rolled up when I talk about the mainstream, the legacy media, because Sunrise does this every single time. They'll cover the topic when they think there's something happening in the States or it's something significant like Westall reunion event, but they'll always play add that air of stigma and ridicule to it and play the bloody X-Files themes. And I've called, I've tried to call Sunrise out on it a number of times, and just absolutely just shits me to tears. And I think it does Jimmy too, because, what really bothers me with, say, Sunrise is that they have a unique opportunity and platform to get some significant figures, some key figures on their show for interviews and discussions. They'll get the Prime Minister Albo. They'll get Richard Marles, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of. They'll get pretty high-powered people that are elected in positions of authority in government, and they don't even bother to exercise a shred of due diligence and ask questions about the UAP topic in an Australian context, because they simply don't care. They just, they're all about clicks and views and copy and paste journalism. It's not a topic that they take seriously, and that's evident by them playing the X-Files theme, which really just frustrates me. One thing I will say, and this is not confirmed, but there was a producer for I'm not going to say which channel or the show, but for a serious news how would you describe them? They put out serious news stories in kind of long format, not just a 2-minute interview like on Sunrise does, but a long form serious news story program. There was a producer with a cameraman at the Westall reunion, and if any of you were there, you may have seen them there. I've been in contact with that producer, and there is discussion on there potentially being Westall covered on in detail in a future news program, long form format. So if that happens, I think that would be wonderful, because obviously next year is the 60th anniversary of Westall, and I think it's time for Westall to probably get back into the public eye. I mean, there have been some great documentaries that have been put out there. Obviously, Shane Ryan with the documentary that he did with Rosie Jones, Westall 66, a suburban UFO mystery. Have a look at it if you haven't seen it. James Fox covered the phenomenon, Westall in brief, and the phenomenon. Ross Coulthart's covered it for 7 Spotlight. So it'll be wonderful if there is a dedicated news program that covered Westall in detail and had primary witnesses interviewed and so on. So if that happens, I think that would definitely be something that would be worthy to watch and be free of stigma and ridicule. So nothing is confirmed, but obviously I'll share with you information as I'm able to share it over time. Let's have a look at, let's come back to the rundown. Go. So where am I going here? So let's share this again. There we go. So let's move away from Westall, and we've got a bit of stuff to cover on Ross in tonight's show. So Ross was recently on with Bryce Zabel, the latest episode of Need to Know, and to Jimmy's point, Ross was talking about a very interesting discussion that he had with a federal minister recently about this federal minister's observation of a UAP in broad daylight in the city of Sydney. So let me play this for you, and we can talk about it on the other side.
Subsumed into the greater North America.
So my question is, all right, we've had a historic good cooperative element between the intelligence agencies of those 5 nations. Has that been hurt by what's going on in the United States? And does it have any impact on UFO intelligence gathering?
It hasn't been hurt at the military intelligence level. I mean, I talk routinely to people in Australian military intelligence who tell me that the level of collaboration in the Five Eyes on all manner of stuff is extraordinary. I mean, Australia has the biggest base and the most important base in the world outside of the continental United States for the United States. It's the Pine Gap Joint Facility. And it used to be the...
and I should apologize in saying this was a first of 2 clips of, Ross talking about Australia as part of the Five Eyes, their engagement on the topic, and obviously going into information now on Pine Gap. So the second clip we'll come to is Ross talking about his engagement with an Australian federal minister. So I just wanted to correct the record there.
Downlink point from all of the DSP satellites that did monitoring of potential ballistic missile launches and, rogue nations like North Korea potentially moving weapons of mass destruction. And that's been a large part of the focus in the last 30 or 40 years. But obviously, Pine Gap has moved on and it's become much more of a communications intercept. And so a lot of the stuff that's happening in the Middle East, often it's an Australian tech that's involved in doing that monitoring. And we're really proud of the work we do. And quite rightly, it's kept secret because there's a lot of monitoring of terrorism. There's a lot of monitoring of the movement of weapons of mass destruction. And Australia is quite rightly proud of the work that it's doing. What's a real problem is that at the political level, I don't want to sound like I'm taking a political position, but I don't think it's been thought through the implications of treating Australia the way it's being treated at the moment with a 10% tariff, which is utterly absurd. We don't have tariffs. We have a trade surplus with you guys. You're bringing more into the United States than you are exporting to us. So, other way around. You're actually exporting more to us than importing from us. And that trade imbalance is the reason why we're supposedly being attacked. But the concern is that it's undermining political confidence in an alliance that has kept the world safe since World War II. And frankly, I think an alliance that has colluded to some degree in keeping quiet on the UAP issue. Because while Australia's political leadership doesn't know about the UAP issue, no politician that I've spoken to, and I've spoken to an enormous number of them, has ever been briefed into any knowledge of the UAP mystery. I know for a fact that there are people in the intelligence community in Australia who routinely read the UAP material on JWICS, which is the confidential communication system that the Five Eyes operates. And there is openly UAP data being stored and collected. And whilst the Australian government has an official position that it doesn't keep UAP data and it doesn't store UAP data, that's a load of bollocks. We do, and we've been sensitively providing that information to the United States for many years. And that's the issue, that essentially there's been a good-natured collaboration now as part of the Five Eyes alliance. And I don't really think that military alliance is in any way under threat. We love America. There's a genuine affection. And frankly, we've fought together, we've bled together. It would never diminish.
And we've done podcasts together.
And we've done podcasts together.
We're striking a blow for international relations here, Ross.
But I have to admit, there is quizzical bemusement, I think is the best way of putting it, that people cannot believe that this is happening, that Australia, of all countries, we are probably one of your closest allies, and there is just shock and bewilderment that we are being punished with tariffs for reasons that absolutely flummox us.
Well, at least I did.
Yeah, so some interesting comments there from Ross. You're obviously talking about the Trump administration and how they're applying tariffs to friends and foes around the world, and Australia's flummoxed and perplexed as to why one of the US's closest allies is being treated like we have to pay up when we've got a free trade agreement. But Ross's comments there were interesting in that, again, he kind of echoed what we were saying earlier, that the intelligence community within Australia is very much more clued in and in tune with intelligence sharing on UAP than what the public-facing component of the Australian Defence Force. We're talking about the Royal Australian Air Force, the Chief of Air Force, who fronts up before a Senate estimates and has to ask questions if a senator asks him, and the other services as well. And the only senator, it was disheartening to hear Ross say that there are no figures no politicians in Australia that are read into or have an active interest in this topic. I mean, the only one that is asking questions is Senator Peter Whish-Wilson, and I doubt I don't know if he's been read into anything. I know that a lot of the information that has been shared with him has been open source information. And I've obviously provided him with information that I've been able to source through FOIA and just keeping apprised of general updates. And Ross has obviously got a direct line of contact with Senator Whish-Wilson as well, and I know others do. So disappointing that there aren't any champions for this topic in Australian government outside of Senator Peter Whish-Wilson. So, but just some interesting comments from Ross there. There was another clip that I thought I had that I wanted to show you, which obviously I thought I did, but I don't. So yes, no, it's this. This is the clip I wanted to show. So this is on Ross on Reality Check. He did an interview with the director of, I think it was Dean Alito, The Alien Perspective, as well as Sean Cahill. And this is where, to Jimmy's point, he talked about how he had engagement with an Australian federal minister who apparently observed a UAP in broad daylight. So let's give this a listen.
It's very strange. There's a familial aspect for me as well. My father was a World War II Foo Fighters witness while the waist gunner and radio operator on a B-17.
Oh, this does my head in. I'm amazed. I'm amazed how often this runs in a family. I had a conversation with I'll have to be discreet here, a federal minister of the Australian government about 6 months ago, and it still sticks in my head because he told me this incredible story about how he was walking out of a government office in the middle of central Sydney, so very crowded street. There's thousands of people at lunchtime, and he's waiting for the Crown car to come and pick him up. Very important guy. And he's there with his press secretary standing there with a bundle of papers. And as he looks up, he sees this giant metallic egg hovering in the square. And he looks at his press secretary, and his press secretary is clearly oblivious to it. And this minister is a very important figure in one of our governments, our previous governments. And he said to me, Ross, I will deny this if you name me, but basically, I want you to know it's real. And more importantly, I just knew I had to ask him, just as a matter of interest, did your dad or your mum or your grandfather, your grandma, did they have experiences? And he looked, how did you know? And it runs in families, this. It's really weird. And I feel it's a disservice to the reporting on this subject matter that we often don't discuss this aspect of the phenomenon, that it seems to be familial. It seems to run in family lines.
So fascinating revelation there that 6 months ago, Ross had a conversation with a federal minister from in the previous government. Now we don't know if that's the oh Christ, I'm having a mental blank. Who was our previous minister? Was it ScoMo? Scott Morrison, I think. Maybe in the Morrison government, a federal minister. So, and if it is in the previous government, but nonetheless, I would love to know who that individual is and learn more about their encounter and obviously their family history with the phenomenon, and if they had taken a keen interest on the topic prior to their observation, or if they have an interest now. I think it would just be fascinating to find out who that is. And I certainly agree. Jojo Diamonds, wonder which minister. And I'm sadly, Ross would probably never reveal that information because the golden rule of investigative journalism, you don't reveal the information about a source unless they consent for you to do so. Jimmy thinks could be Stephen Smith. Wouldn't that be funny if it was Stephen Smith, who Stephen Greer claims he briefed on UAP? Stephen Smith's days in federal politics were quite a while ago. It was, 2013 is when he retired from federal service. Back then, anyway, he was the Minister of Defence back then. Now he's the equivalent of the Australian ambassador to the UK, the High Commissioner over there. So, but it would be interesting if he was indeed Ross's source. So, who knows? Will that individual come forward one day? It would be interesting, wouldn't it? Let's move now on to another Ross clip. Ross was on his most recent reality check, where he did a Q&A session, and he talked about, he was asked this question from a viewer, and I won't reveal the question because his producer asked it, but interesting one, which we talk about frequently on this show. So let me play this clip for you.
At Uptown Saturday, Ross and Megan, renowned remote viewer Pat Price claimed a vast underground extraterrestrial base exists beneath Mount Zeal in Australia's Northern Territory near Alice Springs. Given your somewhat relative proximity, what details can you provide about this intriguing assertion?
I've been asked about this one before, and it's a great question. And look, I've found the CIA records that refer to this. So it is true. During a CIA-sponsored Stargate program investigation using remote viewing, which of course the Pentagon denies the efficacy of, so why on earth did they spend millions of dollars doing the program? There's a certain idiocy to the claims that there's no basis to this psionic attitude, because frankly, they wouldn't have spent the money unless they knew it worked. There was a remote view, and in fact, it's not just one remote viewer that's done this. I was reading just a few days ago about a Lynn Buchanan who's done similar work as a remote viewer. And the claim is that there is some kind of alien base under a place called Mount Zeal, which, as it happens, is very close to Australia and America's most sensitive base outside the continental United States, Pine Gap, the so-called joint facility. If you were an alien species and you wanted to see what the US is really up to, you would go to a very, very remote corner of the Australian outback, slap bang in the middle of central Australia, near Uluru, otherwise known previously as Ayers Rock. And on the McDonnell Ranges, there is this weird place called Pine Gap, where the US has what is essentially a downlink for satellite feeds from orbit, which we know has been used to monitor for intercontinental ballistic missile launches, but I suspect also has other purposes. One of the most secret bases in the world. As for the claim of an alien base, which is about 16 kilometres further to the northwest, I understand, impossible to prove, because I've been to Mount Zeal. I've walked around Mount Zeal, and just for my own fun when I was there, I had a damn good look, and there ain't nothing there. There's lots of lizards, lots of deadly snakes and spiders, lots of what we call scrub in Australia, small little bushes that are struggling to live against the incredibly hot sun. But frankly, I didn't see any aliens.
Well, that's unfortunate, Ross, but if anyone was going to find him, it was going to be you. So thank you for trying.
Nice little comment there. I think Mount Zeal is a little bit further than 16 Ks from Pine Gap. I think Ross got that wrong there inadvertently. But reason I play that clip is we've covered Mount Zeal in a previous episode on the Unexplained Rundown. So AJ from the Y-Files did a really interesting episode on underground alien bases. So the remote viewing work of Joe McGonigal, and he remote viewed, well, he claims to have remote viewed an alien base under Mount Zeal. And so we covered this episode of the Y-Files. It was back in January, I think, of 2024. I've linked it in the show notes below if you want to watch our review or our coverage of that, specifically that Y-Files episode on Mount Zeal. It was the New Year Breakdown episode, January 2024. So check it out if you wish. It's in the show notes below. But yeah, Mount Zeal, I've heard that come up a number of times, and obviously we all know we all know too well about Pine Gap. So feel free to check it out if you wish. I just wanted to flag this with you. Jesse Michaels had Stephen Greer on for about 3.5 hours, only a week or two back. I'm not going to talk any more about Stephen Greer outside of this clip that I'll play for you, because he reiterates his claim that, well, let's just listen to him from Stephen Greer himself.
Given me this incredible this briefing
for the president. We cleaned it up,
okay,
and redacted things,
okay,
and then made it available to the public so everyone can get it now. So you'll have 90+% of what the new president has.
That's pretty awesome. The Disclosure Project Briefing Document 2025. So have you spoken to Trump or his team, or?
I can't talk about the names, but very senior people relevant to this issue and national security, yes. So as soon as the election happened, even before. So some of his closest advisors and major funders have been on my team and are supportive of this. And some of them that are new to that world, and just to be clear to everyone, I'm nonpartisan. So I've dealt with all the way back to Clinton and the Obama and John Podesta, all the way forward to now. So my institute and the Disclosure Project is completely a nonpartisan, has to be. And not only nonpartisan, it's global, because I do the same thing for Europe, Australia, Great Britain. I was just in Great Britain in September. So we're assiduously, carefully nonpartisan.
Australia, you say? Well, again, it would be nice if you provided some documentary evidence to support your claim, because I know Jimmy has actually gone through quite extensively the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive that's on Stephen Greer's website, as well as, I believe, downloaded. Jimmy purchased the intelligence briefing document, and there are very few references to Australia in that intelligence briefing document. One of them we covered in last month's episode about alien abductions in Pine Gap, which I think is just complete BS. But again, in that clip, you can see Dr. Stephen Greer is kind of standing true to his claims. You know, he's standing tall. That he's saying that, oh no, I've provided briefings and engagement with Australia. Well, who? You know, you've claimed Stephen Smith, but all the evidence to the contrary points that you didn't, and that was a fabrication. So it's Jimmy's comments. Greer is the godfather of the grift, and the old poo emoji. Yeah, I mean, again, I think his early work was good, but I just can't take him seriously when he makes these, you know, these very bold claims of engagement of government officials when he might have just sent them an email or a letter, and that's his version of formally briefing them on the topic. So I don't invest a lot of stock in what Stephen Greer says these days. That said, if he does make a claim and it features Australia, I will do what I can to try and track down any evidence to support that claim, because I'm all about UAP in an Australian context. Last thing I wanted to show you is those of you that follow me on X, you may have seen the first episode I did on a multi-part series. We need to talk about Greenstreet. Episode 1, the Golden Rule, calling into question basically, you know, how confident then can current or prospective sources of Stephen Greenstreet be that he's not going to dox them and reveal their identities, because he's done that before. And I cover that. You know, that's the focus of this first episode. It's short, goes for about 9 minutes. I've linked it in the show notes below, so check it out if you're interested. I think it was well overdue that we start to call out Stephen Greenstreet for some of the things where I think he's been grossly lacking. And what is ahead is I'll be doing the next episode. Future episode will be episode 2. We need to talk about Greenstreet, moonlighting. And if you know what moonlighting is, it should give you a tip as to what the focus of that episode will be. So stay tuned. I'll be sure to put that out on. I've only put it out on X because I don't want to be struck with a copyright claim by putting it on my YouTube channel. And I seem to have a greater reach on X anyway. So I thought that might be a way to get the word out on the street a little bit more. I'm not interested in getting any revenue off of the content I'm putting out on Greenstreet. It's purely for information and, to a degree, entertainment purposes, taking the mickey out of Greenstreet to a degree, like he has done of the subjects that he has interviewed over the years and taken the piss out of. So just a FOIA update I wanted to share with you before we wrap things up. You might remember in last month's episode, I covered the Australia revealed in the JFK documents, which came as an interesting surprise. So I was very interested to discover through the release of those files that not only was Australia referenced quite heavily in those documents, but the CIA had a field office in Melbourne, Australia, dating back to the 60s. And that got me thinking, well, if there was a CIA field office in Melbourne in the 60s, and the Westall flying saucer incident happened on the 6th of April, 1966, and if claims are indeed true that the CIA has had a heavy presence or involvement in crash retrieval programs. Well, if, and this is a big if Westall was something truly anomalous, you would think that the CIA would have a hand in retrieving it. So I decided to submit a FOIA request, and I got a response back a few days ago, and essentially I was seeking records created and received by the CIA FE Far East Division Office in Melbourne, Australia, between the 1st of April 1966 and the 30th of April 1966. So I didn't specify Westall, I didn't specify flying saucer, highball, or anything like that. I just wanted to do a broad brush stroke search on records created and received by the CIA Melbourne office across that date range. Now, the response that I got back, after a thorough review of your request, we determined that responsive records, should any exist, so they're not admitting they exist, but should any exist, would be contained in operational files. The CIA Information Act 50 USC 3141, as amended, exempts CIA operational files from the search, review, publication, and disclosure requirements of the FOIA. Now, I found that, and this determination is not subject to an administrative appeal. I found that very interesting. So I have now, again, this doesn't tell us that the records do exist, but it tells us that all records, not being specific, but created or received by, are exempt from FOIA. So I've submitted a new request, being very now specific on keywords and search terms like Westall, like Clayton, which is the suburb that Westall High School is in, like highball. I haven't used the word flying saucer because I want to try and focus it on the school without really giving away what it is I'm really searching for in the request. I doubt it's going to yield any fruit, but nonetheless, it's worth a shot to see if it gets a response. So keep you posted on that front. Again, I just found it very interesting that the CIA had a field office in Melbourne in the 1960s. So that, my friends, is everything that I've wanted to cover off on with you with this month's episode of the Unexplained Rundown. I know a couple of the comments have come through, so I am going to get us out of here before 3 hours. I'm pretty stoked about that. Let's have a look. Yes, I agree with you, Aaron. God, I really hate Sunrise when they cover the UFO UAP topic. Yep, they really take the piss out of it, which is unfortunate. Westall is one of the greatest all-time cases. Completely agree with you. So many rabbit holes with Westall, and it's just so unfortunate. And to Jimmy's point, still blown away that no documentation has ever been found in the National Archives of Australia or elsewhere describing or even stating about the Westall incident. Yeah, there's no official record or explanation. There's no explanation has been provided to date at a government level as to what was observed in the sky above Westall High School and in and around the Grange region. It's just like it never happened. The only individuals, you got a few news reports, newspaper articles, and the witnesses themselves, but you won't find any records in the National Archives of Australia, despite efforts of many folks, including Jimmy, to look for them. So it's just it's so incredibly frustrating. Yes, you're very right there, Jimmy. Trump is running the US like a businessman because that's what he is, a businessman. It's all about the art of the deal, as he claims to have authored that book. Thank you, Jojo Diamonds. Appreciate your kind words. Look, thank you also very much for your kind words. Thank you once again to Depressed Canadian for your generous donations. Hope you're not going to be more depressed tomorrow when you see your bank account. But thank you nonetheless for your generosity. Hope you've enjoyed this episode, folks, of the Unexplained Rundown. Looking forward to having you back. Join me again next month. There may be more than one episode next month because it sounds like there's going to be a lot of things going on in the US. So we'll be keeping a close eye there and hope to also share with you some interesting updates on the Australia front. So enjoy the rest of your Easter Monday. Enjoy, to my fellow Aussies, enjoy your upcoming Anzac Day in the coming days. And thank you again for joining me. Look forward to seeing you all again on another episode of the Unexplained Rundown. So thanks again. Bye for now.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Unexplained Rundown, please consider giving it a thumbs up, sharing with your friends, family, colleagues, and social network, as well as subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to be notified whenever the Unexplained Rundown goes live, premieres, or posts a new video, be sure to ring that cowbell.